Good afternoon, folks. It's now 1:03 PM on Monday, March 28, 2022. We'll open the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust meeting to order. We'll do roll call, starting on my left.
Here, Judith Underwood, sorry.
Don Howell here.
Brendan Lowney.
And Joe Powers. Member Larry Brophy is expected to dial in remotely by 1:25. So we'll get underway with the agenda. First item on the agenda under new business is discussion on the solicitation for quotes for an affordable housing plan. As the members may remember, the original solicitation was extended from the original deadline, which was the end of February. Staff did make contact with, tried to make contact with the three standard proposers as well as others that we knew of. The town heard back from the former incumbent, who indicated that she would be submitting a written quotation by the deadline of Wednesday, March 23rd, last Wednesday at noontime. Unfortunately, we have not heard back from that individual. So we can extend it yet again, but I would open it up for discussion. Selectman Howell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did make contact with Jen Goldson, but brief. I have a dial-in appointment with, if the chair would like to join me on Monday next week at 1:10. Before we ever consider any new dates or anything, I think it'd be important to find out whether she has any interest at all. Because the big background issue here is that she's done about 50% of the work already. So I mean, she interviewed legacy affordable housing advocates in the town. She drove through Dennis, Chatham, and Harwich to look at affordable housing existing. And she did at least one workshop before COVID changed the landscape of who could get into what rooms. So it'd be kind of awkward to start it all over again. I mean, I don't think it would be beneficial to the town either in terms of finances, but I really don't know. We weren't the only people who did that to her, so I really don't know what her workload is right now until then.
Sure, any other discussion points?
No.
So, I'm in a bind as the chief procurement officer. Staff reached out to the former incumbent, and she indicated she was interested. She appreciated the extension, and she said she was going to respond. I'd have to evaluate the appropriateness of me as the chief procurement officer having a discussion outside of another round of solicitations. Members can certainly do that, but I don't know that it's pragmatic or smart for me to do that.
I just brought it up because you're certainly welcome, but I mean, I can understand that as long as the rest of the crew knows that I'm up to it. All I'm interested in is your workflow will allow you to bid, and if you're interested, get back in touch with the town administrator's office because you missed the deadline.
Right. Any other thoughts from any other trust members?
I would support that if Don just reached out to confirm, just because everybody's understaffed and, things are just starting to get back to normal. So I think it's, given the amount of work she'd already put into it and the familiarity with the project, I think it's worth a short extension with the phone call.
Well, I'm not even talking about an extension of time until we know that that's...
Or, right, phone call and then revisit, or, and if you're allowed to do an extension on your own kind of thing. Otherwise, what would be the options to put it like into a...
So there's really nothing on the, of course I'm drawing a blank, comms by, there we go. The state's portal and things like this. There's not a lot of call for that kind of thing specifically. Right. There's any number of consultant vendor relationships that are out there. I'm just flummoxed by the failure to get anyone to respond. I appreciate what everyone has said about, hopefully, certainly my belief that we're coming out of pandemic, but I don't want to jinx us.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
Again, I would say that appropriately, I have an additional burden. And I say that in a positive way. I'm the chief procurement officer for the board, so I'd be willing to defer to whatever the trust wants to do on next steps.
Could I just comment, though, if we talk about this in the future? Because this was a very confusing subject a few meetings ago, or a couple of meetings ago. There's an affordable housing production plan, there's an affordable housing plan. What we're talking about isn't an affordable housing plan, it's an affordable housing action plan for the actual committee and what priorities we would set and how we would set them and what we would set aside money for. It literally is a plan for us, not for
Correct.
housing.
Strategic
And
plan.
any other thoughts on the solicitation or next steps?
I would like to ask the vice chair if he would make that phone call before we do anything else. I don't know.
I don't hear any objections, so I think we can go forward on that. Next item is discussion on solicitation for quotes for professional survey services for 0 Oak Street, map 61, parcels B1-A and B1-B. And let me just make sure. The deadline for these, I believe, was, and I might be getting my deadlines mixed up, but yeah, these were due Friday, March 11th, 2022. The respondents were informed that I'd be updating the trust today before any decisions were made. And so I can tell you folks that we received 2 responses to the request for solicitations. The respondents were, in date order of receipt, was Control Point Associates Incorporated. They work out of Southborough, Massachusetts. And their quotation was $12,250 for the boundary topographic and utility survey, an additional $2,900 on the wetland delineation and sketch, and then an additional charge that was the wetland flags. You get a pack of 25 for $425. So their total quote comes to $15,575. And I would also just note that within their quotation, they indicate with regard to the survey note, let me find it again. Oh, I'd have to be reading the right one to do that. That under their wetland locations bid amount, they indicate that this will include the field location of wetland flags to be established by a consultant provided by your office, meaning the town. So that's an additional factor to weigh in on the evaluation. The second respondent responded on March 11th, Coastal Engineering Company, and they provided a fixed flat fee, and that was $13,500. So on initial inspection, it appears that Coastal Engineering provides the lower cost when you compare fees related to the boundary, topographic, and utility survey, as well as the wetland delineation and sketch. And then, as I've indicated, Control Point Associates has a third item that brings it over $15,000. So generally speaking, my normal course of action would be to execute a standard supplies and services 30B contract with Coastal Engineering. They both appear to be responsive and responsible, and so the differentiating at this point would be the price point to the town. So I open that up for any discussion of the trust.
Brendan, that's normally in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I didn't, can I take a look at the
Absolutely.
control point? Oh, the coastal, I'm sorry, the coastal. Actually, both.
Yep.
These weren't in the agenda packet, were they?
Correct, they were not.
They were not. I mean, is this something we can vote on here today?
So, it's more for general discussion, it's get input of the trust, but,
Yeah.
Because now you're not wearing you're wearing the town administrator hat, right? Just to-
Procurement
just
officer hat.
Procurement officer hat.
so,
Just for that's why they're not in the packet, just for,
correct.
because we don't need to vote on it because of the price
Correct.
point.
Well, I mean, and this is the first property we're gonna be doing something like this on, so,
It's just hard
because
to-
all the properties have issues, right?
Right,
You know, as we go through
Yep.
them, especially the ones on Depot Road and everything else. So,
At least they're here.
I'm sorry?
At least they're here.
Yes, exactly.
and, I have a question, just, and Brenda, maybe you know, like with contractors, if their work goes beyond what they put in the bid, is that?
Well, this will be a fixed price contract based on the
Okay.
description here. Anything that we ask that goes above and beyond this, there could be a change order, but this is a fixed price contract.
No matter
So
what
we
happens,
would get
they
everything here,
still-
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what we need to move forward on.
Yeah, we're
It's
sort-
it's everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, we're sort of dead in the water until we do this.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
once we
But,
do this leads to other things.
and it's realistic, the, bid,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
I mean-
to your earlier questions and comments, the next step would be for me to reach out to the successful provider and say, this is what we understand the case to be. As Brendan's indicated, we do a standard 30B contract with the town's standard language and insurance requirements and things like that. Anything that the other party wants to include is added. And so what we basically say is if there's a disconnect, if there's a dispute, if you will, one document is presented to the arbitrator of choice, whomever that would be, and we say that this is the town's contract, this is what they came back with. But in the discussions, it would be me confirming that, so you understand that this is what the town is looking for through the trust, and that if we understand your proposal, all of the above would be included. And so if they confirm that, we execute it, and then
Yep.
they start.
And do they, is there a time frame in there? And here I'm asking just because I'm trying to get somebody to just because I know people are backed up.
So that's part of the discussion we would have with the vendor, saying, what do you think is a realistic time frame?
Okay,
Generally speaking, we'd want to, if we could, dovetail it with the end of the fiscal year, just because it's cleaner that way, but we could go beyond the fiscal year. What we wouldn't be looking to do is a multi-year term or anything like that. And
No,
so
I-
again, it's really a sense of the vendor, when they think they can start, and what is a realistic end time.
so, okay, I'm just wondering how long that whole process then takes before you could get a,
I'm trying to see if they have anything here in their contract. I don't think they
yeah.
do. If we go with coastal, that could be just a phone call.
Sure, and if you're asking my process, the good news is the value of these are well under the 50,000. So as soon as we have agreement, I can sign, they can sign, and we can get moving. Sure, Ms. Howell?
For those people who don't religiously follow every one of our meetings, I think it's important to point out that Oak Street, as it currently sits, without any kind of survey, we're not sure where there might be wetlands, where there'd be setbacks, and what we could possibly build. And these folks are kind of anxiously waiting for all of those answers, because we have somebody who's willing to put something up there. But I don't know, none of us know whether it's bigger than a bread box right now, because.
I mean, it is almost 3 acres, but yes, once you start, finding where the wetlands are and the setbacks and.
Yep.
What's actually buildable.
So that being said, Judith is right, a lot of the trades are just really backed up because of so much work going on and so much activity. As soon as we can get this baby rolling, it'll be good to
Right.
do it.
That's why I'm just, I guess my question's that if the price are close, could we add that in, or is that not a normal
Time
time?
for performance.
And what-
Time for, thank you, time for performance. Because the one is like
It
in the
depends.
middle
If
of
they're-
the state, I don't know,
Well, I mean, I guess we have to find that information out.
yeah,
I think it'd be nice to move forward with this.
I think it'd be
Only
great.
because Bowler was around 13 and change. This one was 15 plus a couple contingencies. And then, Coastal seems, right where it needs to be. So it seems like all the bids are.
Good.
I don't think we're not overpaying, put it that way.
And if you look in your packet under the, I know it was for the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan, but within that, which is our standard operating procedure, you can see the item that's numbered page 7, that represents the town's standard 30B contract. So you can see the elements there of the scope of work. We would make reference to the town's original solicitation, as well as the scope outlined in the response. We have the time for performance, that would also be considered to be the term. We have the dollar amounts for compensation. The contract document, as I said, would be amended to add whatever document the other party wants to put in. They typically do their solicitation documents. And then everything else is pretty much straightforward as it relates to both council's review and insurance provider's review. So assuming all goes well, all will go well.
Right. So could we do a motion?
It's not necessary,
Okay.
but if it's the sense of the trust that I continue on, I'll continue on.
Yeah, if you could continue on with the supply and service contract for coastal engineering. Then also, could you request that they provide, I think they had it here, a breakdown of their rates of services, very similar to this page here. Just in case we have to do something extra, at least we know what we're getting into. So they can provide their,
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't include
yeah,
that.
they
They
can,
typically do.
yeah.
I noticed on their second page, they indicate reimbursable expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say, please refer to the attached standards and conditions.
Yep.
So I'd ask them to break it out in a more readable form and make sure it also includes
Yeah.
their fee schedule. Yeah, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else under item B? So unlike item A, I think, fingers crossed, we're making progress. Next item on the agenda, item C, is an update and discussion on a possible vote of a status report. So the Community Preservation Committee has reached out to all owners of projects that have been or will be funded by Community Preservation to provide a status update report and present the same. So I'm scheduled to go before Community Preservation next Thursday evening, which either remarkably or frighteningly is actually April. So what they put in, what they told me is what you can see in the agenda, that they're looking for updates on 3 different articles. And so the first one is back from the 2018 annual town meeting, which was, I think, was that the original?
The establishment.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was the original request for the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust for funds to be appropriated for the trust to rely upon, as well as part-time housing coordinator. And if memory serves correctly, that would have broken out, I believe, as $450,000 and $50,000.
Yeah,
Or-
actually 30, 470 and 30.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they had broken it out in years past, so 470,000 was for the trust, and 30,000 was for the coordinator, correct?
Yeah, and eventually that morphed because they had 2 people working on it eventually, Pelinda being the second.
Yep. And then you can see for subsequent years, they've broken it out. Total amount that was approved by the CPC and the breakout for it So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is we've had, obviously, some discussions at our most recent meetings about community preservation. I just wanted to get a sense from the trust members, if there was anything specific you wanted me to highlight or to bear out in the status report. I will be writing the status report following this discussion. I'll share the draft with the trust to get individual input, and away we go. Selectman Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this theme has come up in the past, so I just want to make sure that you're aware of it, because you'd be the third person going in front of them. The housing coordinator, there are some on there that were viewing this as, let's see time cards and let's see how many hours have gone into it. They were brought in for functions. They had some, phone availability. They were doing a Facebook page. They weren't doing an hourly rate any more than that appraisal contract. I mean, the surveying contract is. It was a bundle of services that we were getting from the CDP. So I don't believe it's going to be argumentative, but I mean, there are one or two people that have said, are you tracking the hours they're spending on this? It wasn't contracted for like that.
Thank you, that is helpful. I mean, for me, I can, better or worse, can speak most directly to the Article 32 from last year's annual town meeting. And that's because we still have not located a part-time coordinator after a search, and therefore have not used the funds that were available. And then, of course, I believe everyone knows that at present, we have in consideration by community preservation, two standard requests again for 2022. And part of that, of course, is a $50,000 for a housing coordinator. And then really the question would become if the town approves the housing advocate position. It's my belief, but we would take this up as a trust, that the town wouldn't be looking to impact upon those funds for the coordinator unless trust thought otherwise.
Well, I'll speak up.
Yeah, please.
We have been promising them for several years now that we were going to move away from the contractor model and into an in-house model.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a probably better
the
option.
only durable way of doing this is they work for the town and they're here all the time.
Right.
So that's really what the future holds. And I don't really, if it turns out that we don't wind up needing that money, they're real good at recovering.
Yep.
So we just won't spend it and we'll give it back
We'll give it back.
if that article passes.
So, and real quickly, I recently had a chance to speak with Jill Scalisi, the housing coordinator in Brewster. I sat down with her for about like an hour meeting, and I could maybe present that next time. I'm just going through all the paperwork she gave me and shared. But just real quickly, hour-wise, her position was part-time. It's now crept up, I believe, over 30 hours. And it's all about serving the public. Questions come in. She advises us as well. Finding the right person. It's really a full, she agreed it is a full-time job. There's a lot to do, especially once we ramp up and get a project going as well. So,
Well, even absent a project, I got to point out that there are certain things that we're not even going to be involved with. The accessory apartments that we're now authorized under zoning to do. I mean, there'll be plenty of people
yeah,
that
that
have
person could be helping with everybody.
Yeah,
all
that's
the
what I'm
other
saying.
different committees and everything else. So there's a lot.
rehab projects
Yeah, absolutely.
that don't necessarily come under our aegis. That person should be knowledgeable in statutes to be able to help the people that are going to rent these places out.
So can I ask maybe a hard question? Would it be possible to make it into a full-time position, or is that something that would take another cycle of a year?
Well, that's the housing advocate
Yeah, so the
position.
the housing advocate position is a contemplated full-time benefited salaried position,
Oh,
separate from
right,
housing
okay.
coordinator, correct?
All right,
But we can't know whether that's going to pass until we get past
Right.
the town meeting.
Right.
gotcha,
Yep.
okay.
So the idea, we might just jump to that and not use the $50,000
So this is just a
for-
backup?
Which they would happily take back.
Right, exactly. And it's something we need. We definitely need someone to help out.
And Brendan, in your conversations with Jill and Brewster, it's my understanding that the Brewster model, they do derive the salary, for lack of a better word, the wage appropriation from CPC, but that the town pays any benefits separately under the operating budget. Does that comport to what your knowledge is?
I know I asked that question.
Because I've heard that, I've just never been able to validate it myself.
I'm not sure. We talked about that being the issue
Yeah.
as far as, how you do the benefits and one. I think the town pays for it, but I'd have to double check.
So I
that.
know the town would have to pay any benefits because
Right.
it's not an allowable use
Yeah.
under CPC, but I
Mm.
believe the wages portion of it is. And we have someone from the audience that could probably speak better than I.
Mary Anderson, and I've had a couple of conversations over there with them, and my understanding is that's still how it's set up.
It is,
CPC pays her salary, and the town pays all the benefits.
So-
That was like maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
So that's something we would
Thank
be
you.
able to do.
Say again?
That's something we would be able to do here in Harwich? Same model?
So, no, I think what Selectman Howell had said is that, the town is looking to go above and beyond the model.
Correct, yeah.
Meaning, it would not be funded through CPC.
Correct.
That position, as well as the other one that's being contemplated, I dare not speak at name at this meeting, otherwise that becomes an issue, is they're both presently under the salaries and wages line item of administration.
Okay. All right, great.
And the bottom line here is that you're more or less at the will of the CPC committee.
Jesus Christ.
If we do it that way every year, we're going to have to come to an agreement between them and the town. That's what they're going to do. My sense is that there's at least a couple of people there that are not eager to have this as a permanent relationship for that particular thing.
I would agree. Thank you. I think this is a segue for Larry Brophy to join us.
He just hung up again.
And we lost him. All right.
He didn't want to be subjected to this.
Can I ask the CPC question?
Certainly.
So
Because
if,
Larry has to speak to the next issue anyway, so.
Right.
May as well
just
do it.
for my learning here, so if that 50,000 and 50,000 do not get used, is there any way for us to go back to CPC and say, we could think of another way to use that $100,000? I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great
Could-
question. I'm gonna defer to Selectman Howell on his past experience
Yeah,
with that board.
this is a geeky thing because that was done by an article. It was voted in town meeting for a purpose, so
Okay.
you'd have to get a release from that purpose.
Anything else under item C? As I look anxiously at the,
For the arrival of Larry.
Hey, Larry.
Sorry, I couldn't get through on the passcode.
Okay.
so,
Okay, hi,
Yeah.
Joe.
hi Larry. In the spirit of transparency and openness, would you be willing to try again? Because we heard you and we saw you come up, so we think you were on. And that's only because not everyone can hear you unless you go through the go-to-meeting number.
Okay, I will try again. Okay, because I don't have a pin number, and when I entered the hash code, I couldn't hear anything.
Wouldn't you just,
Just has to hit.
Just
pound.
click-
If we
Just hit
want to
pound.
Continue this way.
We-
Yeah,
okay.
just hit pound.
I'll keep my mic on. Yeah, we'll continue this way, Larry. Why don't you go ahead? We're actually in your, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You were doing
Can
great.
you hear me?
We can hear you and, yep, don't move you. We can, come on back. There we go. Yep,
Okay.
We can see you. And so, was there anything else on item C, community preservation? So Larry, perfect timing, we're gonna turn it over to you, for the articles that you've provided, and if you can kick off our discussion under item D.
Okay, so, the main reason, excuse me, the main reason that I, put that on there, I saw the article in the Cape Cod Times and the follow-up from the Cape Cod Times. And, it seems to hit a lot of areas that we're concerned with, some of which we have no control over. The skilled workers, certainly, the visa holders and so on and so forth. I don't know that we're going to be able to do much with that, but I think that we can do a little something with affordable housing. The fact that we're going to put housing in we got to be very careful with how we do it, and we don't want to end up with something that resembles Chloe's path in any way, shape, and form. That's for another place, for another time. But I think the end result is that we can do a couple of things. We can do work with the Veterans Administration, probably a little closer. And I've been somewhat slack on that, but I know Brendan can fill you in probably better than I on that. And I think we're working toward an RFP. And another thought is that we could probably get some immediate help from Habitat for Humanity. And there's a couple of other things that we could do, but I'd just like to see that we can kickstart some of this. We've made a good start, and I think the important thing is that we follow through on it. And one with a couple of things that we're in the process of doing. You already discussed a surveyor earlier on, I think, and we can probably work with some of that, some of the eminent domain takings. We'd like to move a little quicker, and ultimately, I suspect we're moving toward a housing coordinator, and I think that's going to be really helpful. So all the pieces are beginning to fall in part. We just have to give a little kickstart, that's all.
Larry, thank you. I think when you had sent us the articles, it became
Yeah.
an advanced copy of what I saw in Friday's edition of the Cape Cod Times. So
Yeah.
I think even though this was done through the BU State House News Program, I think Cape Cod Times picked up on it and ran substantially the same article, so the timing, I think, was very good. And thank you for sharing. Any questions or comments from trust members? Selectman Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have an opportunity to talk to Senator Sear about 10 days ago about this, and we went over the act that he's filed, which includes tiny houses and a couple of other things. But right now, the problem is the problem. I mean, and I kind of, I don't know if this is going to sound trite, but there's nothing as successful as success. We need to do at least one thing in the short term to be able to prove that other things can happen. At least that's my feeling, because we're stuck in a place where people are, feeling like it's somewhat hopeless. I hate reading these articles because it just sounds like, well, there's no point in even trying. It's such a dire circumstance, we're never going to fix it. But honestly, as long as we keep plodding forward, I think we can fix it. And I've said probably the last 6 months, there does need to be a legislative change because some of this we have no control over.
Thank you.
Larry, thanks for these, and you said a word that sparked my interest, Kickstarter. I work with a lot of startups that are always looking to raise money on big ideas. And I didn't know if you used that word because you thought that might be a way for us to even raise money to move faster than we could in the usual process.
A Kickstarter or Jumpstarter, either one, I think, fills the bill rather nicely, Judith. And I think when we come back at the next meeting, I've got a couple of methods that I think that we can use that we might be able to jump or kickstart and get some money rolling on this and get a little bit of progress going. The weather is turning good. We'd like to see something get going, and I'd like nothing better. And I think you all share this with me to watch a couple of houses have the roofs go on them before the snow starts.
Yeah.
Again. Having said that, I look forward to the meeting on the 25th. I will be there actually in person. And look forward to.
Larry, I think we just got a thumbs up from Jamie on that as well, having you come back in person, so.
This is the season finale for him.
We could come to you.
We'll
That would be
welcome you back to
nice.
the horseshoe table or whatever the shape this is. Brendan, did you have anything you wanted to convey to Larry?
No, yeah, I think I'm good.
Larry, again, thank you for this, and, we still have another item on the agenda, but we look forward to having you come back in person.
You want
We
to hear me?
we look forward to you coming back and enjoying the weather we're enjoying today, which is wind chill in the 20s. Selectman Howell?
Oh, I hear my wife laughing in the background. It's 78 degrees and sunny.
Go away, Larry.
Snowed this morning.
I will take note that in the articles, that it alludes to something that we've done, but it's another one of those tree falling in the forest where there's nobody there to hear it events. We do have an accessory dwelling unit zoning change that was made. A lot of the people that would be capable of doing this don't know how to approach it, and I'm not sure that they would know how to get it to be part of our inventory, because the town co-op's in your inventory. That's why it's kind of really important to get moving on a housing, either coordinator or whatever you want to call it, because we have not had a presence in town hall where people could go and say, I want to do this, I think it'll accomplish that, how do I do it? I mean, just having a zoning bylaw is fine, but since it actually we don't have developments except for Davenport that are owned by one landlord that have a ton of assets in that neighborhood. So you're going to be doing this necessarily ones and twos as conversions. And if everybody has no clue about what they're doing, then nothing's going to happen.
Is there a cheat sheet? Not a cheat.
There is in the bylaw, it tells exactly,
I mean, out in the hallway?
I believe
that
so, there's
homeowners
rules
can-
on it.
Yeah.
But you're talking about maybe giving money towards an
Well, the process and how to capture them into our affordable housing,
but with a deed restriction on their property?
for the ADU, it would.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So it'd be giving funds to help them create an
Yes.
ADU.
Mhm.
That's something we can definitely look into.
Mary has
Please come forward.
Thank you. Still Mary Anderson, and I was going to save this for later when you had open comments, but I've got to jump in where Don's going with ADUs, because I agree with him completely. I did a webinar on ADUs. It was run by, I think, the Municipal Association, but Elisa Magnata from Housing Assistance Corporation was on it, and Jody Keegan, who, I don't know her title, but it sounds like she's the key player for promoting ADUs or running them. So I just had a follow-up call with her since that webinar and said to her, I know we've got the bylaw passed. What do you suggest we do next? How do we make this happen? She suggested that she would be willing to come out and meet with the key players, who she said are the someone from buildings, someone from health, and someone from planning, and kind of lay out a scope of what she would suggest. Now, to Don's point, certainly once we have this housing person, they'd be key to it. But if we wanted to at least cue something up, we could get those parties together. Some of the things that they've gotten money, and I don't remember whether it's federal or state, doesn't matter. They've got money. And part of what they've done is worked with banks to have the person that wants to add an ADU count their future rents towards part of their down payment. They've done some really creative stuff like that. She also said one of the biggest things they've found out in their survey is the reason a lot of people aren't coming forward to have an ADU, and she said this is not Harwich, this is Cape-wide. They're afraid to come into town hall and talk about it for fear we'll up their taxes or whatever. I think a meeting with Jody and those three players, Joe, if we can and I told her this would probably be after town meeting. It's,
How many days?
but at least
35,
there's
but who's counting?
there's a willing person that knows a lot more than I know anyway, that's willing to help us.
Well, first of all, thank you, Selectman Anderson, for the update. The group that you just mentioned is a subset of our community development team, and they have regular meetings, so that is something that I'll
Okay.
make our assistant town administrator aware, because she sits with that group on a regular basis, and that's exactly the kind of thing they do. So we can start that conversation with Jody and anyone else that we want to have as part of that with that core group. Then they can report back to me. We can also do a broader department head meeting, and this is all within the next 35 days, even though town meeting is coming up.
Great.
So I think we can start right away.
I'll give Megan Jody's contact info then.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
And to follow up on what Mary was saying, there's a vast difference between allowing something to happen and actually encouraging something to happen. So this bylaw changed, but it changed in the dark to some people. I mean, it's almost as if it doesn't exist. I talk to people and they're unclear that they even have this as a tool.
Thank
And
you. And Judy, go
I'm
ahead.
just wondering if, and Mary, maybe those guys know this, if the banks have been looking at this in a different way as far as making, home improvement loans.
There is cash flow,
Yeah.
as Mary pointed out. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not just the increase in the equity of the house.
right. So some sort of tax break if you have the deed restriction for the affordable ADU.
And truth be told, we all know that the problem exists more than just at 60 and 80%. I mean, we all know that. It exists at 100 and 120% too, because there's just, they're all evaporating, all the lower middle class inventory. So I'm not as concerned with this, all these become deed restricted to affordable with a capital A, because the idea of having anything at all available for like mid-level workforce, it's getting to the point where if you take an entry-level teacher's salary, they're not working here and living here. They can't. It doesn't match up.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, the ADU, there are some restrictions, so it's, you have to have 6 months lease or longer, has to be no more than 900 square feet of the existing property, so if you converted your garage. So there are some rules in place, for that. So it really was to get more long-term rentals, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And for homeowners to age in place, so they could even do the swap if they
Swap.
wanted to and rent the big house and stay in the smaller portion, they could do that.
But could that be part of the restriction then?
Well, that's where it gets a little tricky, And then the cost is, to upgrade a garage there's also the,
Brendan,
Well,
my
that's what
parents
I'm-
would have had to add 50 square feet to their house to get to the 900 when I was growing up.
right, exactly, yeah, no, I understand that, so I think people have, yeah. And there's other rules to it, there's, a couple things to consider, but it was really meant for, long-term housing, so, not.
Oh,
any-
yeah, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
but that's why I'm wondering if the banks,
Correct, yeah.
especially if it's a senior who's on a fixed income, lives in their house, maybe has a garage with a space over that could be fixed up.
Right, yeah, it
but
could be
they
done
might
inside,
not easily be able to get that home improvement loan because they're on a fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I'd love to agenda that for another subject, because it probably needs to be a Cape-wide seminar that involves major lenders, the Cooperative Bank, the Cape Cod 5, TD Bank,
And as we start tapping in,
Citizens.
yeah, and as we start tapping into all of these other programs and ADUs and stuff like that, I just found my notes to answer the question that Mary answered. Brewster does do the CPA funds in the town, it is mixed. But the keynote in that was that she fields about 50 phone calls a month from
Oh,
residents through people,
Yeah.
so it's
a lot of
definitely a need for a
outreach.
full-time assistant, especially if we
I
start
agree.
talking about or getting the word out on ADUs, just like Mary just did. People will hear that and start calling, and who are they gonna call?
That's
So
why the
that's-
contractor model was really difficult. I got
Yeah.
complaints all
Well, it was
the
only,
time.
they were only here
about-
Thursdays.
I got complaints all the time, is how do I get a hold of these people?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct, so that's, like I said, as the word gets out, you'll get more calls, so that's why the housing advocate is important.
Any further comments under item D? Larry, any closing comments on that one?
I'm fine.
Thank you. So then next item on the agenda would be member updates.
Maybe for next time, I'm gonna put together my meeting that I had with Jill Scalisi, and I'll give you information that I got on the Millstone project. There's also what she prepares every month for their meeting. She puts together all the activity and just the basic duties. So I'll get all that together for you and have it for you next time.
Excellent, thank you, Brendan. Judith?
Just a question, and it may be part of the Affordable Housing Action Plan. Is there any way to move forward a little bit on the Marceline property as far as the I don't know, is there any updates and any kind of engineering stuff that can start, or does it have to wait until those parcels are figured out? And
I'm deferring to Selectman Howell.
It all hinges on the success of the eminent domain because it's bisected right in the middle. And that project looks a whole heck of a lot different if you're trying to develop two separate blobs of
Right.
land
Correct.
that are separated by another piece of land than it does if they're all joined and we can do subdivision lines, joining the lot lines and then subdividing it out under a 40B of some sort.
So that's really the first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're working on that.
I don't know if it's worth putting on the next agenda an update on the attorney's
So I can do
research?
I can do an update now.
Oh, okay.
In that the Board of Selectmen directed me to seek an alternate appraisal. We were unable to secure any appraisers for that project. We were able to secure them for other projects, and we asked them if they would be interested. And generally, the response was a polite decline because they've indicated they feel that the original appraisal that was done is accurate. So I need to return to the Board of Selectmen and inform them that we have not had any success in finding a secondary appraisal. And so then, as Selectman Howell has said, the next step then would be for, well, I think survey's already been done.
Escrowing.
Right, would be straight to escrow and then the legal parameters.
And what do those processes look like?
So generally speaking, we would tell KP Law that we have a sufficient appraisal. We have prior survey documents that were done for the trust as it relates to the overall parcels. And they would engage their subcontractor on title work. And then they would set aside the funds that town meeting appropriated in October in escrow. And work from there.
Yeah, the approval's already happened. We just have to button up the follow-up.
Right.
And is that like, I don't know, a month, 2 months? Is there like that research generally, is there
So the research, I would say, is if I were able to direct them, just say May 1st as an example, I think we could reasonably expect to hear back by the sub, probably sometime in the summertime. When I spoke to council a few weeks ago, the general time frame was assuming we don't have to do any additional work on the appraisal, that the appraisal is sufficient to proceed, then we're looking at a fall 22 next steps.
sorry, just to back up, why can't you make that call before May 1st? What did I miss?
It was a directive of the Board of Selectmen following the Finance Committee meeting prior to the special town meeting. So administration through procurement's been trying to find a secondary appraisal to see if it would come in below the 175, I think it was, or 170 maybe.
And so now you go to the Board of Selectmen and say, no, that's not possible, and then it's,
Take direction from the board, and if it's proceed with what we have, then I can advise council.
and that'll take a month?
No, I'm saying if by the end of the month, we have council working on the survey work.
Oh, it'll take the research will take 6 months, or,
Correct.
gotcha,
Generally speaking.
okay.
But I do want the public to understand that the taking has happened. A vote for the town meeting has occurred. What we're obligated to do legally is set aside a sufficient amount of money so that if somebody shows up alleging that they have 100% or some sort of equity share of the property, that they can be equitably compensated, but they don't get the property. They get whatever the pro rata is for what's been determined its value.
And they have 3 years to come forward, or
So,
5 years?
So it has to be placed in escrow for 3 years. If they come within the 3 years, the town essentially has the appropriation to pay what they think is a fair and accurate, fair and equitable amount, as Selectman Howell has said. Then after the 3 years, we're no longer required to keep it in escrow. The burden would be on anyone claiming to have claim to the property.
But we still
then-
wind up with the property. That's
Right,
all.
right,
Whatever
just like
it
an
is.
But only after the research is completed.
No, we're still just talking about money and compensation. We are not talking about ownership. The ownership part has been done.
So if the ownership part is done, can't the research happen concurrently with any other kind of prep work?
To me, the main issue is whether the Board of Selectmen still wish to seek a secondary appraisal.
So
Because
the,
right now, we have an appropriation for $170,000. We have those funds available for escrow. The board, in conversation with Finance Committee, wanted to see if there was an appraisal that would come in lower.
But if you put-
the issue being is that when it was appraised for 170, which seems high for a piece of property that could be potentially landlocked. But because there was a paper road, they saw if that road does exist, then that property does have a value of 170, which seems to be right on with other properties selling in Harwich. That was the issue, so we're just working through that.
But if you were to put that on next week's Board of Selectmen agenda, they could theoretically give you a yay or a nay, and then I'm the disconnect for the next 6 weeks.
So I'm not suggesting 6 weeks. What I'm suggesting is what the board has on their plate this week and next week for town meeting. So if we could contemplate them taking this up in earnest sometime in the middle of April, that's why I can see something happening formally by the end of
Okay.
April.
Sorry, I heard you wrong.
And again, that assumes that I won't say the word satisfied, but that we're set with the current appraisal. Anything else for member updates?
I said that I talked with Julian Sear. That's my update.
Thank you. Larry, any member updates?
No, I'll bring, Brendan's going to make a small report for the next meeting. I will make a small report on perhaps alternate ways of funding some of this work.
That's a great idea.
Created-
Yeah,
Excellent.
I like the Kickstarter.
All right, so if there's no other member updates, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 25th, 2022, 1 PM here in the Griffin Room. Is there a motion to
Move to
adjourn?
adjourn.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded, and I'll do a roll call with a remote member. Judith?
Aye?
Don?
Aye.
Brendan?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you.